Welcome back to another Supercoach video with me, JD. You are joining me for the round 20 Supercoach review, and it has been a huge week for pretty much everyone. It was a massive week of scoring where lots of players went off, lots of points to be had. Those that had full primo teams, I think finally got rewarded. I definitely saw a few teams last week and even a couple of weeks ago as well where they might have had one or two rookies because they couldn't cover injury trades, or last week there was a lot of people out due to COVID and rookies were covering. And I felt like the rookies have held up and scored pretty well. But this is one of those weeks where if you're still playing rookies and you weren't playing premiums, I felt like you were at a pretty big disadvantage. So we're going to quickly go through that, where my team's at, who I had that scored well, how I got a 2672. And I really don't think there's too much to talk about this week apart from me to mention a few regrets, which I have every week, and they seem to mount. It's a really bad mindset that I'm in at the moment, that I am ranked so well, but I'm still not happy. I guess part of it's good because it's that drive to be better. But then also I know some of it's just being negative and second guessing, or using hindsight, where I may have been weighing up a decision, but more often than not my gut's right, and it's never going to be right 100% of the time, and you can't just go and regret all the silly things you did. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit, so got to fill out 10 minutes, right? There's nothing else to talk about. Oh, and we want to talk about the Olympics, which I hope everyone's watching because it's been really good this week. Definitely a good break from everything else that's going on in the world at the moment. So, so as I mentioned, I scored almost 2,700, just fell short. That puts me in the top 400, which is good. I mentioned a few weeks ago, I think if I somehow jagged a top 300 from here, I'd be really pleased with that. I mean, I think anything, top 500, top 1,000, these are all great results. Anything 3 digits is a really good score. So, this is looking possible now. Another 70 ranks up this week. But I'm guessing we're starting to get to the point where those ahead of me probably also have full teams. I might even still have trades, which means injuries only hurt me. But yeah, let's jump into it. It looks like it might be possible with a few rounds to go. So what has changed this week? Well, still no trades, and still couldn't do any trades. I think I'm probably just going to pick a few players. I don't need to go through everyone, but I think my team personally, it felt like I had a really bipolar week. So you had players like Ridley, Neil, Bontempelli, Bolton, and to a lesser extent Hind and Whitfield and Short that underperformed, and some of them quite poorly. A 50 from Ridley is bad, a 50 from Bolton is bad, a 70 from Neil is shocking, and even a 90 from Bontempelli. It's not a bad basement score from a premium, but definitely lower than what we'd expect from Bon, and he's still somewhat one of my uniques. Neil's one of my more unique picks as well. I haven't looked at Bolton's ownership stats, but I assume he is too. I know the types of things that were holding me back from this score being even larger, being in the 2700s and really getting close to that 300 overall, which once again, this is the bad mindset. I should be happy that I had such a good week, moved up another 70 ranks, which is excellent. And instead, I'm already nitpicking the small things that didn't go right. It's so bad. But yeah, I feel like the week overall was quite bipolar because you did have these down scores, but then at the other extreme, we had some massive scores, some really, really big ones, especially in the midfielders. So Steele, Walsh, Oliver, McRae, Zerrett, and Spray all going over 130, and 4 of those were over 150, which is nuts. 3 over 165, that's crazy. And I captained one of them, captaining a 166, that's awesome. So that was all really good. I guess just touching on those down back, is anyone that's really worth talking about? Oh, Ridley, just because he did poorly. I think what we saw with Ridley again this week was he was the person manning up on Papley. Essendon still does like to give him lockdown roles from time to time, and when those happen, his scoring suffers as a result. So I felt like that was, really highlighted again this week. Having to follow him around means he can't drop off and be the third man up. And then I think the other thing we saw is that it was a very accurate scoring game, despite the really high scoring totals, 200 points plus scored, whatever it was. I have a feeling Swanton had about 5 or 6 points. And if Ridley just doesn't happen to be on the right right part of the ground when those points are scored because he's following up the field, whatever it may be. All of a sudden he's not able to peel off an intercept mark and he's not able to get those kickouts, and that just destroys his score. Short was a really interesting one. He started off super strong and looked like he was going to bang home like a reasonably good ton, like a 110, 120, but wasn't able to keep it up. And then it looked like the other extreme going into the last quarter. It looked like he was going to maybe put together like a 60 or a 70, but was able to kind of like, I was going to say junk it up, which is a bit disrespectful because that was a close game right to the end. But yeah, he kind of like, he was very yo-yo. He was actually like one of the more bipolar players himself, that black and white logo that you see on fan footy. Whitfield, I guess, a bit similar. Like he was one that started out really strong. I think he was leading or close to leading GWS scoring at quarter time and faded as they kind of got overrun by Port. Really interesting pick. He feels like someone should have been scoring more, but just isn't. No, the other defenders really worth talking about. I guess the rest of them, Laird, Stewart, and Lloyd, they'll scored well, what would expect, like still a little bit on the high side, but that's great. In the mids, Steele is just so good. I sent out a tweet, and if you don't follow me on Twitter and you'd like to see my my tweet once every 3 weeks on Supercoach topic, it's probably going to be a meme or a joke more often than it'll be something serious. Then please do follow me at Jackson Davey on Twitter. But yeah, Steele, he halfway through the first quarter, he had 7 tackles, which was more tackles than any other player had disposals on the field at that point in time, which is insane. This is one of the things we talk about with Steele at the start of the year as to why he's not really taggable. Being an ex-tagger himself, his frame and his play style helps as well, but being an ex-tagger himself, if you start to put pressure on him, he just starts tackling. He just starts taking out the other opponent anyway. So, he's just really interesting. The way he scores, the way he plays. Obviously a good-looking roaster. And yeah, loved talking about it. I felt really bad on Friday night missing the vice captain because he was the one I liked. If I wasn't going to go Bont Oliver, I liked Steele as my other option. And so seeing him put up a 150, I felt so sick. So I'm like, oh no, I'm going to miss out on a good captain again this week. And I've had 4 captains the last couple of weeks, but Oliver came through, which is very, very nice. Walsh is great. That's why Walsh is just insane. But what he's doing for his age is bonkers. I don't think he's someone that we're going to start next year just because seems to start seasons a little bit slower, and these younger players a little bit harder to trust. But yeah, after the bye, he's great. And Steele, Walsh, McRae, and Oliver, they're all in the same boat where they just play 22 games every year. They're very durable, mostly consistent scorings, and they're all over 120. It's just so good, so good. I must say, mids is the one line this year we haven't really had too many headaches, which has been very pleasant of them. McRae was the better of the dogs. Bont, and what's Bont's 5-round average? Because there's no way this is a good average, right? 102.6. So after the bye, he had a 143 and a 156, and then after that, he said 3 of his 5 games have been sub 100, and the 2 tons weren't really that big anyway. It's quite interesting because when he hit 700, or was getting close to it on the Supercoach Take podcast with George and Enno, we were talking about whether Bont was a must-have at that point. And I think we've seen every time that someone's hit 700k this year, it's generally better just to sell them. Oliver, Bont, who's the other one? Oh, Darcy hit it, and I don't think he had a good this game, so he might have come back. I don't know. Sean Darcy put up he did a 116. Maybe he's the exception. But yeah, it's quite interesting that they do seem to come down 100k, and so it's something just to keep in the back of your mind next year. If a player jags his way to a 700k price tag off the back of a 200 or whatever it may be, that it might be a good opportunity to downgrade them, especially if it's over the buys. Oliver's obviously bounced back. I would imagine Bont bounces back, but it's just so hard for them to maintain a 700k price tag. It's Bont's 588 and he's going to fall further. Bont has obviously been great for the year, but personally, quite disappointed for the last 5 weeks, given he's still somewhat of a pod compared to the rest of the competition. Merritt was great. his inside 50 kicking was amazing. He's kicking in general in the game was really good. It opened up a lot for Essendon, and it shows why he's normally the one that gets attention. It's benefited him that Parrish is there, because teams now have to split which one of them they're going to put attention to. So I guess the other interesting thing with Merritt is it's cool that he's shown he has this high ceiling still, but he is definitely not as relied on in the coalface. He's not required to be as contested as what he used to be. So he does have, I guess, a bit more variance in his scoring now, because it's not as safe and solid with that floor. Oliver was great. He looked like he was on track for a double ton at halftime. I think he had about 100. Was everywhere. Had, I think, more clearances than Gold Coast did just by himself. His contested possessions were off the chart, and I was super worried, because when I first started looking at the scores, he was 9 contested possessions from his first 10 disposals in the first quarter, and only on 28 Supercoach. And I was like, oh no, I've picked another dud, captain. And that was a very bad take on my behalf, because Oliver pulled it out, and he was back to some of his best. And it's no coincidence that Melbourne is starting to turn around their form, Gawn and Oliver, and then Petrarca as well. I think he put it together a 150-ish. Their forms all started to turn around, which is good for Melbourne supporters, because it should put them in good stead towards the finals. But obviously, you'd like to see them put together some games, not as dominant, but competitive against other top teams if they're going to carry it through to September. Neil. Oh, Neil. This is... It feels like every game he's playing one hand behind his back. This game, for those that didn't watch it, he had a head clash, had to come off, probably to stop the bleeding, but then also had the 20-minute concussion protocol. So if you consider that he had a 70 off basically 3 quarters, because he missed most of the first, I believe, it's not that bad. Maybe he would have got a 95-ish, but this has been a really disappointing pick. Last week he got tagged. This week this is it's just, then there'll be another injury niggle or something like that. There's just something wrong every week with Neil. I have a feeling he's going to be someone that we really heavily consider at the start of next year, just because of his scoring history, his relatively good durability up until this year, and the fact that he's going to be priced 100. He's going to be really hard to turn down, but man, this has been a bad pick to finish up the year for me. And then finally, Brayshaw. Oh, what a gun. This is, Brayshaw is another one of those night and day players. He seems to either put out 130s or 80s, and this week he went much bigger than that with the 190. I actually thought this was going to be a 200 game. He was, once again, one of those players was 120 at halftime, and he was actually, I guess, what hurt him was he disappeared a little bit in the third. When I say disappeared, he still scored well, but it was just, by his standards in the game, it was a bit of a disappearing act, especially early in the third. But in the fourth, even last minute, he had 2 clutch contested possessions from stoppages, roving off Darcy in the Tigers 4-50 to win them that game, to help them hold on by less than a goal. And yeah, he was phenomenal. He was really, really good. The only downside of him scoring 190s this is it just screams tag me. It screams tag me. Now they're up against Brisbane this week, I want to say. And I don't think they're not notoriously a team that tags. I think they just go head to head. So maybe he'll be okay. But yeah, this is great for now. It's a nice little sugar hit, but yeah, this is a little bit worrying. The rucks were fine. Yeah, they were fine. Gawn, it was good to see Gawn put together a good score again. It's actually interesting to see that his average is above Grundy's, because Gawn's been struggling. When I say struggling, he's been fine, but his Supercoach scoring has been struggling with Jackson taking some of the ruck time. But yeah, and Grundy, I think he had mega poor ratio in this game, which hurt. In the forward line, Dangerfield 88 was a little bit surprising, just because he's been in such good form. But that's fine, he's good. Bang Brothers, we say it every week, don't we? Oh, Hall and Zeeble, can't believe it. Just what did they put together this week? 234 between them. Cheeky little 117 each on average. So good. It's so good owning them. We're not going to get them next year. They'll be moved to defenders anyway, and then I'm not sure you'd start either of them, but this is very, very nice in our forward lines because a lot of what else has happened has been very disappointing. Dale had a good bounce back week with 130. And then, yeah, Hind and Bolton, another week of pain for me. It's crazy that, I was tossing it between, and, this is some where some of the negative view was like, when Langford went down and got injured, should I trade him to Hind or should I just upgrade Coleman Jones to Nick Blakey and, for the 2 or 3 weeks, and then at the end of it, swap Langford back on and have Blakey for cover? Now, Blakey outscored Hind the last 2 weeks, and then Langford outscored Hind this week. So, and I would have had cover now, like that wasn't McRae. So I definitely should have done that trade, and that's really annoying. And the other one here was Bolton. So I went him over Hawkins, who I assume, like I know he wasn't playing particularly great, but I still think he salvaged a decent score, right? Yeah, 77. So he's gone 112 and 77, I think, in his last 2, and Bolton's gone 50 and 60. Yeah, 56 and 42. So he's put together a 98 over the last 2 games combined. If I had just gotten Marshall, I could have fielded McRae's 50 and then Marshall's 150. Would have been up 100 points there. With Hind and Langford, I would have been up a little bit more points. And, it's just really frustrating because that combined with the bad captain options over the last couple of weeks would have easily put me in the top 300 already. I'd be in a super strong spot, but it is what it is. As they say, the forward line's been a disaster. Like Marshall, Dunkley, Dusty, Langford, all injuries that if they hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be playing Hind and Bolton. I would be playing 2 others here instead. I wouldn't be dealing with these terrible scores from forwards I never really wanted to pick. But it is what it is. Okay, so we'll quickly go through vice captain and captain, and we should be able to wrap it up from there. So looking at this fixture, which I'm sure will move around, you've got Bulldogs coming up against Essendon. We are pretty good at conceding some scores. So, McRae could be a decent option there. It's a Marvel, which he loves. You have Saints play against the Swans. Now, obviously, the Swans just gave a huge score to Merit. Still could do well against them, I guess. I don't know. I'm not in love with that, but maybe if it's a vice captain option. The Demons play West Coast, who are absolute rabble at the moment. I was saying in Discord that they make the Saints look consistent with how up and down they've been with their performances. I would expect that Melbourne absolutely smashes them, and there'd be some good scores on offer for Oliver. But yeah, who else is there? Carlton play Gold Coast, so I guess Walsh will be an option this week. I think that's it. It's actually not particularly great. Who are other popular ones? Oh, you've got Hawthorn play Collingwood, so maybe Tom Mitchell's an option. Like maybe he's a vice captain. I don't know if I'd captain him, but he's been in decent form. GWS they play the Cat, so I probably wouldn't pick anyone from that match. I think that's pretty much it. So you'll have potentially Steele, but yeah, the Dogs and the Ds are probably the ones. Oh, and Walsh are probably the ones that I'd consider this week. I'm just on first pass. What's Hawks ruck situation? Are they still playing a rookie ruck? Maybe Grundy's a viable option against the Hawks. That's another one you could consider as well. Okay, well, with that said, let's not drag it on any longer than it needs to be. I actually think I've somehow made this more than 15 minutes, which is nuts. So yeah, let me know how big your scores were this week, where you're up to in the ranks. If you are considering any trades, which, if you're a league player and you haven't been playing for a while, you might have some up your sleeve. So all the more power to you. I hope your league matchups are going well. I had my first cashy matchup this weekend, and that one wasn't even close. I blew out by hundreds of points. So yep, that was nice. That always feels good. But yeah, with that said and done, wishing you the best for the rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.